is a member of our church and an elder and a good doctor, but he's better known for being a good husband and a wonderful father. And your thing is pneumatology? No.
Rheumatology.
Rheumatology.
All right.
Thank you, Reverend. Great, thank you. Thank you for inviting me or having me here with you this afternoon. I'm really excited to be here. I've never been a part of this CMDA group. I have had the opportunity to go to a couple of the CMDA luncheons at the University of Incarnate Word School of Osteopathic Medicine. Scott and Kelly have been gracious enough to send or to join us down there. So I'm on faculty there, and I'm really excited to see what's going on there with the new learners there at UIW. And I'm just excited that CMDA has stretched south to join us. So as I was considering what to talk about today, one of the things that struck me is that the first time that I was on this campus was a very memorable event for me. It was fall of 1999, and I was wearing a minted blue suit with my favorite orange tie. And I was interviewing for medical school, and I had two interviews at that time. A PhD basic scientist interviewed me, and that interview went, favorably. I think it went well. Didn't go bad. And a physician interviewed me, and I don't remember that physician's specialty, but that person knew that I was going to be joining the military. And so they proceeded to ask me questions about the DoD health policy. I knew nothing about DoD health policy. I didn't know anything about U.S. healthcare policy. I didn't know anything about Veterans Affairs health policy. And this person was visibly upset with my lack of preparation. And so I left that interview knowing something. I left knowing that I was not going to be going to medical school at UT Health San Antonio. So, I'd like to open by reading this passage from Psalm 37. Psalm 37, verses 3 through 7. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for Him. Fret not yourself over the one who prospers in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. So in 2004, I did graduate from medical school. I went to UT Houston, just up the road, and my wife is here today. Really have some fond memories of our time in Houston. It was a great place, and some good years. Came back to San Antonio, did my residency training and fellowship training with the military programs here, and graduated with an internal medicine, or finished internal medicine residency and a rheumatology fellowship, and was a newly minted specialist back in 2009. And I was really excited to be a rheumatologist. And for the medical students here who have not yet decided on a specialty, I really want to put in a plug for rheumatology. Rheumatology is it's a wonderful specialty. It's a wonderful lifestyle. The patients can be really fascinating. There's this continuity between the basic sciences and clinical medicine, and the immunology is really interesting. The pharmacology is up and coming and just really exciting. And the patients are, you get to still maintain, even as a specialist, you get to maintain, a good long-term relationship with so many of your patients. And so there's a little bit of that sort of primary care feel, but there's still some specialty care feel, and patients really appreciate it when you can provide them with a treatment management plan that they notice. You know, when their pain improves from their arthritis or whatnot. So rheumatology, I really enjoyed that practice. But admittedly, there are some aspects of the specialty that can be a little bit challenging, a little bit frustrating. Chronic pain. Chronic pain is really difficult to have. It's really difficult to manage also. It's frustrating. And it became really frustrating for me early on in my practice. And I would get frustrated not only with, certain aspects of patient care, but I would also tend to, in the military, to get frustrated with some of the things that I thought were just unjust. People, in the military, you have to complete a physical fitness test at least annually in order to remain, active duty. And so some people would utilize, seemingly, this is my judgment, seemingly utilize symptoms or reported symptoms to get out of having to take a physical fitness test, or to get out of having to deploy. Deployment's no fun, you know that. Or even utilize, or report symptoms because of their desire to just get out of the military. And then even there are some folks who will game the system in a way to gain financial remuneration from a disability system that is in place to help people who truly have need. And I became very perturbed and frustrated with that system. And my wife would bear the burden of my lamenting and my complaining and my frustration. And frankly, I found that I became aware of the fact that I was really malcontent in my practice. Nonetheless, I did enjoy the patient care like I was describing. And nonetheless, I have an 8-year commitment. I had an 8-year commitment after completion of all my training. And I really began to deliberate. Should I stay in the military and earn a pension after retirement so I can have that security? Or should I move on to the greener pastures of the civilian world and start that practice? And so I was continuously deliberating and just trying to figure out what I should do. And frankly, I was worrying too much about this. And I would talk to my wife about it, and she would encourage me or try to convince me to do one thing or the other. And after really months and years of this deliberation, I recall about 2.5 years ago, coming home, complaining about something, and saying, I really don't know what I should do. Should I stay in the military? Should I get out? She says, will you just please make a decision? She was really frustrated, and I understood. As I was deliberating, I was trying to, balance that sense of gaining security from a pension and military benefit and the medical bonuses that physicians receive in the military with my frustration with a system that I figured was dysfunctional. Really what I was trying to do, though, is I was trying to be in complete control and have self-determination of my vocational and personal and financial security. And about a year and a half ago, I woke up one night, and it was 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and I couldn't sleep. I just got up, left my bed, went to the living room, and decided I was going to pray. I was praying, and I decided I was going to read through the book of Romans. I had heard somebody say that you really should just sit down and read Romans in one sitting. It's just rich. So I was reading through the book of Romans, and I came across this passage as I was going through. Romans 8, 14 through 15 reads, "For all who are led by the Spirit of God are sons of God. For you did not receive the spirit of fear, but you have received the spirit of adoption as sons, by whom we cry, Abba, Father." I realized that the Lord was calling me to a place of utter dependence upon Him. And just knowing that I needed to really trust in His goodness, His faithfulness, and His love as a father. And so that night, after much praying and continued deliberation, it really came to me. It was time to move on, to leave the military, and to get out of the Air Force. And so I woke up my wife that morning, like 6 o'clock in the morning. I was so excited, and I told her I made a decision, and she was walking away. And so there I was. I decided I'm getting out of the military. So that was a while back, and so last fall I started the process of getting out of the military. And so I dropped my papers the day after the election, which was totally a coincidence. And I began through that process, and I began to fill out the paperwork that was necessary. And some of the paperwork that had to be completed was paperwork for the Department of Veterans Affairs. Okay, so the Veterans Affairs Department is responsible for caring for people after they have transitioned out of the military, which includes various benefits, including health care. And so I had to consider various signs and symptoms, things that I had experienced medically over the course of my time on active duty, a little over 12 years. And so during my time on active duty, I had a little bit of just aches and pains. I had some tinnitus, some allergies, vertigo, and I had some low back pain. In fact, the low back pain was problematic for me. It kept me from doing a lot of things I like to do. In particular, I had been an avid runner, and I really was unable to run for 2 years because of this back pain. And so then as I'm filling out this paperwork, I'm thinking, oh, this is curious. But mind you, in December of last year, 2016, my wife and I were having a conversation about, we were just talking, and I told her, I said, it's really remarkable. For the last 8 weeks, I have been completely pain-free. And I've been in pain for about 2.5, 3 years. Pretty severe, and off and on for years. But I have been feeling really good for about 8 weeks. And I had seen a chiropractor, and I was working with physical therapy, and I just felt good. And I was so grateful to the Lord, because He was healing me, and I was physically feeling that, experiencing it. So that was December. In January, I'm filling out the VA paperwork, and I'm starting to list some of the diagnoses that I had had throughout my time on active duty. And I started to think, okay, I've got this ailment and this symptom and some low back pain, yada yada. I wonder if I would qualify as having some kind of disability. Would I qualify for a disability rating? If you have a 10% disability rating, you get $100 a month, and if you have a 20% disability rating, you get $40, $500 a month. I don't know what the values are exactly, but you get this money for the rest of your life. And I stopped and I thought, wow, I wonder if my constellation of illnesses over the course of active duty would qualify me for disability. So I filled out the paperwork, full disclosure, completely honest, and I was kind of getting a little excited about it. That was Thursday, January 12th of this year. I woke up that morning completely pain-free. It was not stiff. And as I filled out that paperwork, I realized I wanted a VA disability. Friday morning, I woke up with a little bit of sickness. And I didn't think anything of it. Okay, I was a little stiff. I went to work. I was sitting in my chair in the office seeing patients, and I couldn't get comfortable as I would, interview patients, type on the computer, you know what I do. And I just didn't feel well. Went home that evening. The kids, my children, I have 3 children, give them $1 to rub my back, and they would rub my back. My little 6-year-old at the time would walk on my back. It just felt wonderful. They were stretching out my thighs, and I just thought, I don't know what I did, but they were helping me to feel comfortable Friday. Saturday morning I woke up and it was actually worse. And I was uncomfortable. I was having to lay on the floor in my living room with my feet propped up on the couch, just sort of like supine, but with my knees bent on the couch. That was the only position that I could get comfortable in. And mind you, I had had no symptoms for 8 weeks, if not longer. And I'm laying there on the floor, just wondering, what caused this? I hadn't been running, of course. I hadn't shot hoops with my son recently. I didn't do any crazy lifting. I was just really struck with, the sudden onset of this stiffness. And I'm a physician. I know that you can get these intermittent bouts of discomfort, but usually it's after some kind of exertional activity. So I went to bed that night, got a little bit of sleep, and Sunday morning I woke up very early, 4 o'clock in the morning. Went to lay down on the floor in the living room. And if I needed to go to the restroom, it took everything I had to just roll over into a crawling position so that I could arise to kind of limp to the restroom. And I was getting a little bit nervous. I had to call one of the pastors that Sunday morning. I was supposed to have been teaching Sunday school, and I called the pastor and I said, I'm in a lot of pain. I'm sorry. Please pray for me, but I also need you to find somebody to cover for me to teach Sunday school. Ultimately, that was taken care of, and I spent the day on my back. Thought nothing of it. Went to bed that night, uncomfortable, woke up again early in the morning, laying on my back, on the floor. Mind you, that Monday was Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, so I knew I wasn't going to be able to get an acute appointment. The DOD clinics, of course, closed throughout the weekend, and I was thinking, okay, I've got to bear with this till Tuesday. So I wake up Monday morning, and the Lord speaks to me. I had chosen to glory in my weakness. I had chosen to glory in this, potential, supposed financial gain that would come from having back pain. And I told you about the lament that I had early in my career toward various people with pain. And I was laying there, and the Lord admonished me. I could not arise from the floor of my living room. And I had denied the wonder of God's love for me and the healing that He had given me just 2 weeks prior. And now I was completely disabled for the moment. And I could hear the Lord speaking to me that morning. In whom and what do you trust? Bless my name and trust in me and me alone. You can see the irony still weighs on quite heavily. I wept. I was scared. And I confessed. And I prayed. And I laid on my living room floor in humility. With time, the back pain did improve. In fact, it improved really quickly. Not too surprising for those of us who know how back pain, flare, exacerbations course. But the Lord had spoken to me in a way that I think was very real. And I want to go back to this song. I've highlighted some terms. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and befriend faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and He will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord and trust in Him, and He will act. He will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your justice as the noonday. Be still before the Lord and wait patiently on him. Fret not yourself over the ones who prosper in his way, over the man who carries out evil devices. He will bring forth your righteousness. What righteousness? That righteousness that he brings forth is contingent upon trust in the Lord. Delighting yourself in the Lord. Committing your way to him and trusting in him to act. These words were heavy for me. And I'm grateful that the Lord is faithful, that he was faithful to lie me on my back, unable to get up, and to show me that my lack of faith was despicable, and that if I trust in him and his goodness, he will provide. And he had. He had provided me complete healing. And I was joyful for that. But I was also despicable in my response, as I described. So now I got out of the military in the summer. I joined the UIW School of Osteopathic Medicine faculty. Really enjoying working down there on the south side. I work in a west side clinic. And I see some rheumatic disease. Pretty busy. I see a lot of chronic pain. I see a lot of people who are suffering. And I see a lot of people who are trying to work the system. People who need to work the system for their benefit, and others who, I still question. But the Lord has placed me there. And I recognize that as a good thing. I have experience seeing patients with these various signs and symptoms and diagnoses, and I'm grateful to be there. I just started, so much more to come. I can't speak too much about it, but I just wanted to leave you with this psalm in particular. As you're practicing, as you go forward into your practice, most of you being students and perhaps residents, I challenge you to trust in the Lord, not in your own. Apart from him, you have no righteousness. But in him, you do. And I leave you with this psalm. And I'd like to just close with a prayer. Father, I thank you for this time that we have together. I thank you for the truth of your Son's righteousness that is our own by faith. I thank you for the conviction of sin. I thank you for your Spirit that leads us to faith, and for the righteousness that you give us. Thank you for these students. I ask that you would bless them in their studies and in the ministry of their vocation as they continue to progress. I thank you for CMDA here at UT Health and for CMDA at Incarnate Word. I bless your name. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Thank you.